All right. Good evening, everyone. Happy Wednesday. It is March 2nd, 2011. We are going to be joined by Max Igan, joining us all the way from Australia. And if you are not familiar with his works, you can go to thecrowhouse.com and check out all of his movies, even music, other videos and such, all of his radio archives. And one thing we love about Max, all of his work he put there for you. It is 100% free. You can either watch him on YouTube or Google or even download high-definition versions. The Calling, The Awakening, The Big Picture, New World Order, Final Solution, and Fight the New World Order with Global Non-Compliance. They are excellent videos. And what I love about Max, he doesn't just talk about the problem, which he does quite effectively, but he talks about solutions, and that's what we like here. And we have Max here up in the first segment. It is so good to have you here tonight, Max. How you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Christie. Thanks for inviting me onto the show.
All right. Well, thanks so much for being here. I feel very blessed. Lots of fans of your work here. Let's talk about that a little bit. And Matt, what brought you into this realm of basically shattering the paradigm of the social structure that we've been so conditioned to accept as normal?
Well, I've been studying this stuff for a long time in my life. It had been kind of a hobby of me all the way through my life. I actually spent most of my life as a musician traveling around the place. And that kind of got me in a position where I could meet a lot of people and I had access to lots of different areas. I could go to lots of different libraries. So it was kind of a hobby for me. And investigating all of this stuff, the ruling bloodline and the advent of the New World Order, the new global government they've been trying to bring in, they've been talking about it for over 100 years. It got to a certain stage where you think, okay, well, we're waiting for this big event to happen. We're waiting for this big end game to happen. And when 9/11 happened, I thought, oh my God, here it is. It's about time I didn't just research this, but actually started telling people about it as well. So I started speaking out, going to chat rooms and blogs and doing everything I could that way. And it wasn't until about 2007 that I discovered YouTube, and it all went from there. And I always thought YouTube was somewhere that high school kids went and posted their school socials and things. I didn't really think it was much. I'd never really been there and looked at it. And someone sent me a clip they'd done, and it was just a slideshow, and they were talking about the truth, and they'd posted it on YouTube, and I thought, wow, YouTube, I can do that. So I thought, well, I'll just put out a slideshow. I'll put out a slideshow and make a sort of a rough YouTube clip and see if anybody watches it. So I put out the big picture, and that turned into a 90-minute film. So I put about half of it up there. I put like 4 parts, and I labelled it as going to have 9 parts. So number 4 to 9 was sitting up there for quite a while, and I thought, I wonder if anyone's watching this. And then I got all these emails from people saying, where's the rest of the movie, So I finished it and put it up there, and then I ended up getting interviewed on a radio station because of it, and I was on there every week for a month, and then they offered me my own show, and so I've been speaking out ever since then, and I'm just very gratified that people have been listening. I'm really, really honoured that people have actually given the words consideration.
Well, Max, you do such a good job at getting the information out there and putting it in a way that everyone can relate to. It seems you kind of had a head start in discovering, or maybe you always knew, that things were wrong. And I think that's something that probably all of us know in our gut, in the pit of our stomach. But, just because we know everything's a lie doesn't mean that we know what the truth is. And sometimes we find ourselves running away from situations we really don't even know what we're running away from, which of course makes it easier to fall back into the traps of the matrix and society's structure. But you kind of always knew that things were off.
Yeah, I knew ever since I was a child. Like, I can remember when I was 3 and 4 years old, looking around just thinking that this is all wrong. It's not supposed to be like this. And I always felt like I had some sort of a purpose in the world, but I didn't know what that was. Mm-hmm. And even through my early school years, I just didn't get along at school. I didn't like what the teachers were trying to teach me. And then when I was 8 years old, my mother showed me a picture of the pyramids, and she said that no one knew how they made these things. I was in grade 3, I think. And she said they don't know how anybody built these things. And so I used to just drool over encyclopedias from then on. I couldn't read very much of what was said. I used to have to get people to read it to me, some of the bigger words. But I used to look at all the pictures of the pyramids and the dinosaurs and all these things. And so I just got fascinated with everything that existed outside of society. And I never really fell into the matrix my whole life. I've got to say that I'm 53 years old. I've never had a normal job. I've spent my life doing artwork, playing music. The most normal job I ever had was I spent a few years on and off building film sets. And that's certainly not normal either. But most of my life I managed to live on the outside of society, and I was able to look in, and it was kind of like watching the Truman Show or something, you know. I mean, I'm looking at this society and I'm just thinking, all these people are completely brainwashed. They don't know what they're doing. They're running around collecting paper. That's all they do is they collect paper so they can spend on things that they don't need. And all these office buildings, I looked at all these office buildings, I thought, and all they do in these buildings is move paper around. They just move stacks of paper and slips of paper from one room to another. All this whole society is just based on moving and collecting paper. It's bizarre. And I was kind of looking at things from that perspective my whole life, and I've always just, like I said, managed to live on the outside of society. I've just always followed synchronicity in my life. I believe that if you follow synchronicity, I don't particularly put any real value on money at all. I find that I'll have money if I need money, and if I don't need any, then I probably haven't got any, but that's okay because I don't need it at the time. You know, it just works for me if I live life like that. And I've kind of lived on the outside of everything for my whole life, so that's kind of given me the perspective that I've had. But I believe that we're capable of fixing all of this. I think it all provides us with opportunities. I think what the opportunity is for us to realise who and what we are, to stand up and come into our power, connect with those around us, realise that this whole matrix, this whole financial, social, educational, legal, political system that we live in, it's a meme, it's a matrix. It doesn't actually exist. It's just an energetic life form that we give our energy to because we believe it exists. Yes. This is a world of abundance. We could all be getting along with each other. No wars, no problems, no diseases, no starvation, no homelessness, none of it. All we have to do is realise that it's a fictional system, and what exists is people in the world.
Well, how did your parents and teachers or authorities take you? Because, I mean, I know now, even as an adult, you pose that line of thinking. And what do you mean it's fictional? What do you mean it's an illusion? No, it's real. You're just supposed to do this because we're always told this. So what was it like as a child growing up and just completely shattering their illusions?
Well, I used to question everything that my teachers taught me at school. I was right through school. I was actually in 4 different schools because they didn't really like me in any of the schools I was in.
Good job.
I used to take a lot of time off my classes as well. I'd go there and I'd say, look, they're just teaching me this rubbish again. It doesn't mean anything. And I'd just not go to any of the classes. I'd go to the library and I'd read books and educate myself. And then I'd show up for the exams and I'd pass all the exams. And I hadn't done any of the classes. And they really hated me for that. They really didn't like me doing that. And I used to question everything they told me as far as history and science and reality goes. A teacher would tell us something about the pyramids and I'd say, excuse me, sir, that's a theory. I've got 3 books here that have all different theories on what you just told me, and you should be presenting that theory to the class as the most acceptable theory or the most popular theory, but you shouldn't be presenting it with a fact because there's no way to prove that it is. And they did not like that. And that's the way I was all through high school. And I ended up with my own desk outside the principal's office for the last 18 months of my school. I left halfway through my exams in the second last year of high school, never attended any other educational institution after that, and I think I'm a lot better for it. A lot of people ask me, oh, you're so articulate and you're so knowledgeable, where were you educated? And I say, well, I wasn't educated. They never got hold of me. That's why I'm so knowledgeable.
Exactly. You had less to unlearn than the rest of us.
Well, exactly. I spend most of my time in school. I figured these people are not teaching me what I want to know. They're not teaching me anything that will help me in life. They're teaching me how to be a good little obedient cog in the big machine. And I'm not interested in the big machine. I'm here to learn who and what I am and what this world's all about. So I spent about 90% of my high school years sitting in the school library reading books on ancient history, reading books on politics, and just reading as much as I could. I spent most of my high school life reading. Didn't attend many of the classes at all.
Mm-hmm. And you still passed with flying colors?
Well, yeah, I'd go and find out what the topic was, what we were going to be tested on, and I'd go and study it. I'd read it. I'd know the topic usually better than the class would because I'd spent my year reading.
You know, here's a question on the chat, Max. She asks, what I don't get is, why do some of us see through the illusion and others are so easily duped?
Well, I think a lot of it is just the frequency that many of us are. I think there's a lot of people that have come here to help with the awakening that needs to happen. A lot of people are lower in the, shall we say, spiritual evolutionary chain. A lot of people simply don't see things that way. They're locked in left brain, maybe too much fluoride, vaccinations when they're young, all that sort of stuff. See, everything about our society is designed to keep you locked in left brain. And some people are simply more locked into it than others. Perhaps they seem to have found some sort of way of shutting down the corpus callosum, the neurofibers that connect your left brain to your right brain. It's like it's almost like there's a barrier there that prevent people from going into that way of thinking. And they think very, very left brain. Everything has to be rational, has to be scientific, has to be mathematically perfect. All the T's have to be crossed and the I's have to be dotted. And a lot of people simply think that way. And another thing is the way people have been systematically dumbed down through the education system. Even with spelling. I mean, I look at spelling these days, and not many people seem to be able to spell anymore. And
we have spell check to do it for us.
Yeah, and even with the internet chats where people are using just letters now for words. And you look at an Oxford dictionary from 100 years ago, and you look at one now, and the size of the books is incredible. We've lost thousands and thousands of words out of the language, and most people are trained to think in words, and their understanding of reality is therefore based on their understanding of the language. And
I wonder if LOL is in the dictionary yet.
Probably. I know people who spend a lot of time on computers, and when you tell them a joke, they go, lol. And I think, wow, you're even being taught not to laugh, you know.
You mean they actually say that?
They say
loud?
lol. I know kids who say lol, you know.
Oh, okay.
And so they're brainwashing people through this language, and most people's understanding of reality is based on their understanding of the language because they think with their left brain. And so you're trying to wake up people who can't even spell, who are going to say lol instead of laughing. And they're being systematically put into their left brain, and then all the information is being removed from them. Through the chemical additives, through television, through even the internet, and a lot of the stuff they're doing, they are removing everything from humanity that makes us human. And
now, do you think it's being removed entirely, or is it accessible somewhere in our soul, in our DNA, or maybe it's just hidden from us because of, you know, the toxins and things that we're ingesting and using to suppress our innate abilities?
Oh, absolutely. It's available to everybody.
Okay. So it is still there. It's accessible to all of us, just some of us don't know that it's there because we kind of put ourselves in this box to fit into this so-called civilized society.
Well, people are put within the box as soon as they're old enough to be able to receive information from the outside world. They're put into an education system which is designed to put them into the box and make sure they stay in their left brain. Make sure they think that this system is real. We're
Learn how to parrot things. Whoever repeats the information the best gets the best grade, and then you go to the best college, and then you get the coolest piece of paper, and then all of a sudden you're running the world without ever even questioning, you know, the facts or theories put before us. Max, is it safe to assume that the public education in Australia is similar to what's going on here in the U.S.?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a systematic dumbing down of people. That's what it's for. The government-funded education system is creating people that are more and more disconnected, more and more stupid. And I mean that in a nice way. I don't mean to insult anybody, but that's simply what they're doing. I've got a thing on my website called "Can You Pass an 8th Grade Test?"
Oh, gosh.
People go and,
No.
if people go and look in the article archives and have a look at this 8th grade test, it's from 1897, I think. And you would find that university students of the modern day cannot pass this 8th grade test. And it was actually used in the 7th grade, but if they didn't pass it in the 7th grade, they could get to do it again in the 8th grade. And that's the level of intellect that we've lost over the last 100 years. It's been done systematically. See, like I said, they take away everything from you that makes you human, and then they offer you cheap imitations. See, we have the ability within ourselves to recode our DNA, to activate our DNA, to flood our pineal gland and to open our pineal gland and to experience higher realms, to experience higher consciousness, to communicate with reality in a completely different way to what we do. But we're taught not to. We don't need the internet in order to communicate with each other. We can do it normally anyway with our higher senses if we were allowed to have them active.
Well, the internet, isn't it essentially just a carbon copy of the inner net, what we already have innate within us?
Exactly, but it's a cheap, clunky digital version. You have access to a lot more than this through your higher senses. So we only actually experience 3% of reality because we only have 3% of our DNA active. You know,
and then the scientists, the people who proclaim to know everything, the people who are educating us say, 96% of it is just junk.
Junk DNA, like God messed up. You know, we don't.
Yeah, he didn't know what he was doing, but, you know, the guys in white coats, they have all the answers, except that 96%.
Yeah, exactly. So that is the rest of us. That's where a lot of our higher senses lie within awakening that DNA. Now, they feed us toxins and the fluoride and all the things they feed us so that our pineal gland is calcified by the time we're 8 years old. And we can't ever activate these higher senses until we can learn how to unblock our pineal gland, learn what reality is. That's why they're so up in arms about all the ayahuasca ceremonies and all of that that's going on at the moment. There's a move here in Australia to ban all plants that contain DMT. And
oh my gosh, yeah.
This DMT, rather than being a hallucinogen, it's actually the interface that nature uses to communicate with itself. It's the
I mean, hello, our brain produces it. So
it's in everything. And see, this is being done to further disconnect us and reality from itself. They want to do everything they can to remove us from our humanity, remove us from our connection to nature, keep us totally locked in left brain, and then they offer us enhancements like internet, like computer chips that can raise your IQ to 300 now that we've reduced it to 60. You know,
oh my God.
And you've got one of probably 2,000 anyway, but we won't let you use it. We've kept you bumping along on 120 for the last few years. And now we've reduced it down to 60. We're going to offer you one of 300 by a computer chip. So you can see where they're going with it.
Oh, my goodness, Max. Yeah, very good point. It is that time, though, so hold that right there. We're going to be right back after this short break. During the break, we were talking, and you said that in Australia they actually made home births illegal.
Yeah, that's correct. That you can probably still sneak one in, but if anything happens, then they will hold you liable for they'll probably put you up for murder of your baby or attempted murder or whatever. I mean, they're doing everything they can to disconnect people. It's like you were talking over there, homeschooling is illegal in some states. You're still allowed to homeschool here, but they'll try it in America and they'll see what they get to work and then they'll bring it over here. And they'll try all this banning of home birthing here in Australia and see what they can get to work and then they'll take it over there. They do it this way. They use each country as a testing ground and see which method works the best and then they extrapolate it out across the rest of the world. So people need to forget about their thoughts of political nationalism because we may have, nationalism, obviously you're an American and proud to be that way. I'm an Australian and proud to be that way. But politically, our governments are the same entity. And this is right across all Western governments. It's all one entity that's run out of Europe. So you can't go thinking Australia is this and America is that because they're all actually run out of Europe. America is being portrayed as the big bad bullies of the world at the moment, but really it's a European banking cartel that's using their corporation of America, which is the military arm of the Illuminati, to do the damage that it's doing. You can't blame America. America is simply a puppet show.
Yeah, and definitely not the people involved. I mean, that's part of, with the same entities controlling us all, we've besides the divides that were taught as children, I mean, even going to school, for instance, oh, my school's better than yours, my team's better than yours, oh, this is America's finest city, those people are backwards, etc. We've had the same divide with entire countries and, entire races or religions of people. We've been taught to demonize because, in America, we're free, right? Everyone else is backwards, so we better go kill them all to keep us free. And it's just, it's not the people that are to blame. It's the system. It's, I don't really know anyone that feels okay with just killing and poisoning a bunch of people because they supposedly have a different belief. Maybe if you put on a uniform or a costume, a badge, or a funny hat, then all of a sudden it's acceptable.
Well, it's a exploitation of tribal instincts as well. Like, my team, your team, my country's better than your country. This is a competitive tribal thing. And as far as the uniforms go, you'll notice that people change a little bit when they put on a uniform. They put on a lot of what is essentially occult talismans is what they're putting on. Soldiers wearing 5-pointed stars, red ribbons, oak leaves, all of these sorts of things. These are ancient Druidic talismans. And even when a person puts on a police uniform or any type of uniform, and you can try it yourself, folks, go and get a uniform and put it on. You feel different when you are wearing a uniform. You just do. Mm-hmm. And
it's like going to act on stage, right?
Well, it is, but when you put on these uniforms and they have these occult symbolisms all over them, they literally change your energetic state. They absolutely affect you on an energetic level. And when you get a crowd of people all in the same uniform, it kind of creates this meme within the meme. It creates another energetic organism. And people start behaving differently when they're wearing these uniforms. That's why they want people to wear uniforms. And also, a lot of the things that these people are involved in are occult rituals. Most wars are occult rituals. That's why you have to have your uniform on when you're on the battlefield, because it's no good having someone there to sacrifice if they don't have the correct talismans around them to make sure it's a righteous sacrifice. That's the way they work. That's the way they do it. It's so deep when you really start going down the rabbit hole, what's being done to keep people locked into this false paradigm that they live in. And
so you think simply putting on the uniforms with these occult symbols that maybe unconsciously the wearer of the uniform is kind of tapping into that frequency, maybe unknowingly?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Mm-hmm. These things contain the symbolism that creates a certain energetic field around them and connects them to people that are in the same energy field. These are all occult talismans. They're all sigils all over these uniforms. The way the ribbon has to sit, the way the rope has to go, the placement of the medals, the shape of the medals, the shape of the stripes, the 5-pointed stars, the oak leaves, the red ribbons. These are all sigils that create certain energy forms, and they control people through these energies. They create a medium for this energy to interact, and that's why a lot of these soldiers do such mindless things. I mean, some of the things that we've seen in Iraq that American soldiers and British soldiers have done in Iraq, it's shocking. A normal person couldn't do this. But when you're in this uniform and you're in this energy and they're listening to this heavy metal music and they're in this video game mentality, they can do anything. You get one of these guys who's a cold-blooded killer on the battlefield, you get him down the corner in the park with his kids, and he's probably a really nice guy. And he'll probably have nightmares about stuff that he did when he was in that energetic state for the rest of his life. But there's something that happens to these people when they put these uniforms on and they behave in the most brutal manner, in ways that are completely alien to humanity. So you've got to ask yourself why and what goes on and what is all this ritual that these people are doing all the time. It's all energy rituals. It's all designed to harvest energy and to perpetuate this matrix, to put this energy into the field so we're all drawing on it and perpetuating it.
Absolutely. Harvesting energy. A comment in the text chat just came up. She said her 4-year-old daughter picked up a pair of Nikes and pointed to the symbol and said, "Because this is here, it will make me run fast." So,
Yeah.
I mean, we're associated with all these symbols. So let me ask you this, though. Can we make a love uniform, perhaps, and distribute it and help other people? I mean, would they be able to tap into a higher consciousness or higher vibration with, I don't know. Are there any symbols that could promote that besides the ones that, that they're using to keep us into the lower vibrational states?
Well, look, there probably are, but most of the ones that we get told are good symbols are really not good symbols. Things like the peace sign. The peace sign is actually the death rune. You'll find the peace sign on the gravestones of many Nazi SS officers. And since people have been giving this symbol their attention, the world hasn't really got peaceful, has it? It's sort of...
Yeah, and they call police officers peace officers who are there to serve and protect.
The thing is, all of this symbolism, most symbolism anyway, no matter what it is, most sigils and symbolism affect you in your lowest senses. Now, I can't see anything good in any symbolism. If you can awaken higher senses and perceive reality around you and understand that you're interacting with it emotionally all the time, emotions are literally a language, and you are interacting with reality in ways that you cannot imagine because you can't see any changes around you with the five senses. But you are affecting the energy field around you, and you're affecting everything around you through your emotional state. And that's what a lot of these things are designed to do, a lot of these wars. I mean, you imagine the emotional state you're in when you're on the battlefield, and then people watching these wars, and they're getting, go kill them, or feeling horror at what they're seeing, or just giving it their attention. It's all this whole energy thing. I believe that a lot of ancient history was designed to teach people this language, the language of emotion. And I think that all of the symbols that we see around us affect us adversely. I can't see the good in any of them. I think that even giving them your attention and even thinking that these things will work in positive ways, I think you're missing the point. You're still in left brain. You're not connecting with reality the way it is. Because what actually exists is this single conscious being that's divided into this split consciousness, living in this fractal reality. It's like if people have ayahuasca and stuff, what you are actually perceiving in those experiences is what's actually going on around you. And that's what people don't understand. They're connecting and they're talking to reality around them all the time by simply giving symbols their attention, because by even giving any symbol your attention, you're simply affirming the matrix. You're just affirming the hologram. And there's a lot more than the hologram.
Well, there's an idea in the text chat. One of the listeners said our love uniform should be our birthday suit.
Well, that's the way it would be.
It will, in our natural state, we wouldn't feel so ashamed of our nakedness, and whether it's physical, spiritual, or emotional. But talking about symbols, let me ask you this, because I know a lot of, let me put it this way. Doesn't it have to do with our intent? Because we can really pervert things that are beautiful and natural, such as a butterfly. And I'm a photographer, and I love taking photos of nature, but if I take a picture of a flower and a butterfly, then all of a sudden I work for the CIA.
Well,
so I mean, we can kind of take the symbolism too far either way. I mean, I really don't think when God created butterflies, he had the CIA or MK Ultra or mind control in mind. I mean, I think it represents something very beautiful, the different stages that they go through, because we go through the same. Most of us are still in our cocoon, whether we want to recognize it or not. So I guess I think there's a point where we can take the symbols, too far, or some people think a pyramid is a wonderful, beautiful symbol, where others, think it's Satan's playhouse, or other things that we've heard here on the show. So isn't it really the symbols? Doesn't our intent have any role in how we relate with it?
Well, look, it does too. Intent has a lot to do with everything. But what I'm saying is that people that give their intentions to symbols and things, I mean, they're missing the point. That's just part of the matrix. They're in the matrix. They're thinking about 3D reality. too much, and there's a lot more. There's a lot of other higher senses that people aren't connecting with. Your emotional state is the most important thing. My emotional state is a state of unconditional love, and people will say, well, it's impossible for a human being to reach unconditional love, but they're not seeing what love is. They're thinking love is this warm, fuzzy, I love you. They're mistaking love with need and want and lust and all sorts of things. All love actually is the opposite of fear. So if you've removed fear from your life, then what are you in? You're in a state of love. And it's unconditional because there is no fear. There's nothing that I fear. I don't fear death. I don't fear anything that can be done to me by anybody within this hologram. So giving attention to any type of symbol, you're missing the point. Sure, I mean, you can do this if it makes you feel good, but there's things like five-pointed stars. I mean, a five-pointed star is a symbol of Venus, the energy of Venus, Lucifer. Lucifer is simply Venus. The whole pentagon and all this, it all relates to Venus. It's not Satanism. It's using the energy of Venus to somehow manipulate this hologram that we're in. That's what a lot of these five-pointed stars and all these sigils and things do. Because any symbol that you're giving your attention to, no matter what your intention is, you need to know how you are interacting with that symbol in higher realms. It isn't just about intention, because we have many, many higher senses that we are completely unaware of. Most people are completely unaware of. And unless you are aware of these senses, then you have no idea how you may be interacting with that symbol with a sense that you don't know you have in a realm that you can't perceive. And I point to things such as the peace sign. People give the peace sign their attention, and they have an intention for peace. But the peace sign is actually an ancient druidic rune called the death rune, and you've noticed that the world hasn't got very peaceful since people have been giving this symbol their attention, because they're interacting with it in higher realms that they simply can't perceive. And I think that if you need to give your attention to a symbol, you're missing the point that all your attention should be going within yourself. Everything you need to know lies within you. You don't need to give your attention to a symbol that's been put there for you in the external world. You're missing the point.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. You know, I was sharing with you on the break, speaking of symbols, as a child, you know, the devil horn sign or whatever that people flash, we were taught that that meant I love you. So if you didn't flash that hand signal, then, you know, you'd get in trouble or something, or questioned, what, you don't love me? And, you know, of course, as a child, I mean, you're absolutely right. There's all of these spheres and realms of things going on that we just don't know or comprehend. So we're told it may mean one thing, but we don't realize that we're actually facilitating the situation that we think we are standing against. But, you know, speaking of symbols, there was another question in the text chat, and it reads, I'd love to know Max's take on the use of pyramids and other ancient structures as a frequency source that perhaps connected the world's people through consciousness. Does he believe that there were advanced civilizations prior to the deluge 10 to 12,000 years ago?
I absolutely believe there were civilizations 10 to 12,000 years ago, and a lot further back than that. I think humanity has been here for a very, very, very long time. I don't think anything that they have told us about history is true. I've written a book actually called Earth's Forbidden Secrets, which I put on the Crow House. I'm still working on part 2. It's been very, very difficult to get any work done on it in the last year since I've been doing the radio shows and the films. But I think that we've been around for thousands and thousands and possibly even millions of years. I don't think anything that they've told you about the past is true. And when you consider it, the only thing we can know for sure is information that goes back 3 generations. Everything before then comes from books. And we don't know who wrote these books. You could write a book and put a really nice leather cover on it and print it up really well and make it look old. And this book could come from anywhere, and the information could come from anywhere. So I think people need to look and pay attention to what's lying all around the planet right there for them to see. Some of the vitrified ruins through Europe, some of the ancient structures all through Egypt. And the talk of pyramids are absolutely an energy source. They're a very, very powerful structure. And everything that we see is in triads. Everything is triads, the way the IMF works with the World Bank and all these things. They're all, if you look at the whole Illuminati system, it's all triads. It's all triangles and triads. And we actually went through it one day and we realized that it's actually a cheap imitation of the flower of life. They're creating a matrix within the matrix. So these are very, very powerful structures. I think that the pyramids were probably something to do with an energy transfer device. I think possibly even to charge the world grid, anything like that. I mean, there's so many possibilities, things that they could have been used for. It's very, very difficult to say. But I think that the ancient Egyptian culture knew all about this energy. They knew all about how to channel this energy. They knew all about how to communicate with reality through use of their emotions. I believe that a lot of the temples in Egypt aren't actually temples. They were books that taught you how to interact with energy fields. And I know that from simply going there and walking through some of the ruins. You can walk into the Temple of Osiris in Abydos, for example, and you can literally feel the energy field when you walk into the temple. And this thing's in ruins. Mm-hmm. And then you would find hieroglyphs and texts and drawings and zodiac symbols and all this stuff all through the temple that to a normal layman walking through there just look like pretty pictures, but to an initiate, these sigils and these symbols taught you what that emotion was that you experienced and how to harness that emotion and speak with that emotion. That's what these temples were. They were actually books. They were teaching you the language of feeling and emotion.
Oh,
I believe that's
okay.
Well, I believe that's what the whole Egyptian society was based on, was understanding this language of emotion and making sure you had a good transfer from this reality into the next reality, because you need to understand the language of emotion in order to interact with the reality that comes after this one.
Yeah, well, you talk about that too, and of course the emotional states in your documentaries, so I definitely want to talk more about that. We have several callers on the line. Our first call tonight looks like our friend Russ. How you doing tonight, Russ?
I'm hanging in there, Christie. Thank you very much. Max, what did you call it before they come up with the word synchronicity?
Synchronicity? What do I mean by synchronicity?
No. What? I've been, like yourself, from a very young age, wondering what was going on and studying myself. And I remember when the word synchronicity came into play, and I heard you earlier say synchronicity, and I'm just wondering if you had a term for it before synchronicity was brought into the vocabulary discussing this.
No, I didn't really. I just used to follow it anyway. I just used to pay attention to what was going on around me. Opportunity, I suppose I would have referred to it as. You know, when opportunities presented themselves to me, I always took them, but I realized later that it was synchronistic. The whole thing was synchronistic.
Kind of like there was a grand plan, and you were blessed with the opportunity to get into it in the very early stages, maybe?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's almost like following your Dharma. I've often talked about Dharma on many of my shows. Dharma is your perfect place in the cosmic machine that we refer to as reality. You know, Dharma determines whether you are in the right place in action, in deed, in thought, in everything. I believe that when you are in that place, then life kind of unfolds for you. Little opportunities are put there before you every day. You just have to simply trust in them and go with them and trust in your heart. Your heart will always tell you what to do, and if you go with that, it'll lead you to some amazing places.
Okay, and so Dharma would that maybe be equal to the purpose, an individual's purpose, and the desire in their heart? If they seek out their desire, they find their purpose, and then they're in their Dharma?
Well, I mean, your Dharma can be determined by your correct place in the divine machine in order for the machine to function properly. In order to follow your Dharma, you need to do the right thing at the right time, in the right way, for the right reason. And people might ask, well, what is right? Well, to me, when I look at reality, I realize that there is only one law that governs all of reality, and that is the law of absolute unconditional love and service to the creation for the Creator. Service to the creation does not mean service to others at the expense of the self, does not mean service to self at the expense of others. It means service to the creation. And you have an attitude of, in Lakesh, I'm another yourself, we are all each other. Why would I wish to do anything to you that I was not prepared to experience myself? Then you can find your Dharma. You can do the right thing in the right time, in the right way, for the right reason all the time, simply operating within those parameters. And when you do this, your life simply unfolds before you, and it certainly has for me.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see or are aware of first of all, would you agree that there's an unseen world that we're also a part of? I mean, it would almost be self-evident from listening to what you're saying. There is an unseen world, correct?
Oh, absolutely, there is. There is. You're only actually experiencing about 3% of reality. You have a lot of higher senses that you do not know you are using all the time, simply because our DNA is shut down.
Speak for yourself, Max. My DNA I'm running around more than I was years ago, and I'm not where I'm going yet.
I'm speaking generally.
Of course. All right, Russ, gentlemen, hold that right there. It is that time. We're going to be right back with a much longer segment. Max Igan here on Truth Brigade Radio. I'm not sure if Russ got all of his questions in, so we're going to go back to you for a second, Russ. Did you have anything else?
Well, I just wanted to finish up the thought, and then, I wanted to close out with a question that I wanted to hear Max's answer to. The reason that I asked about the unseen world, what I wanted to get your thoughts on, Max, was, do you see forces in that unseen world, a force that one could just generically say is a good force that's here to help us, and the other one is a bad force that's here to hinder us from achieving the fullness of an understanding of self?
Well, I look at everything from a perspective of energy. There are simply two different polarities of energy, and it's which one we choose to embrace.
The closing thought that I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, you'd mentioned it along the way, somewhere along the way, in my observation of societies and history and current times and everything, I'd observed that man has asked the question why and how for at least 6,000 years and never got an answer that three people could agree to. So I came to the conclusion that maybe we're asking the wrong question, that we ought to be asking who and what. And so I'll leave it at that and let you comment on that and listen to the other callers. Thank you, Christie, and thanks, Max.
No worries,
right,
Russ.
Thanks for calling in.
Well, who and what is again, it's the energy. I mean, there are certain forces that are in control here, but I, again, look at things from an energetic perspective. I believe it's what we give our attention to, and the who and what really all lies within ourselves. I think all the answers lie within ourselves.
Okay, very good. Absolutely. And thanks, Russ. Our next caller tonight, it says Bob, area code 501. Welcome to the show.
Hey, hi, Christie, and hello, Max.
Hi there. How you doing tonight?
Hi, Bob.
Doing good tonight.
Great.
Yeah, Max, I really enjoy your work. I have to say that first off. I found you about 6 months ago, and just fantastic. I love your website, love everything you do.
Well, thanks very much, Bob. Thanks for listening.
Yes.
Hey, my pleasure. The pyramids were mentioned earlier, and that kind of sent me in one direction here. I'll cover it this way. We have a lot of the literature out there that always demonizes the giants. But a thought occurred to me a few weeks back that, the dinosaur era, apparently 65 million years ago or whatever, whether it's true or not, everything was a lot larger. The plants, the insects, the animals. And who's to say that mankind was not very large during that time period, too? And what do you think the possibility is of that?
Oh, absolutely. It wouldn't surprise me at all. There's actually different texts and different literature that very much suggests that. I believe that a lot of the megalithic structures that we see around South America and stuff like this, I believe that they were built that way to not only be earthquake-proof, but to also keep the large animals out of the compounds. There's all sorts of evidence that man lived contemporaneously with dinosaurs. I don't believe they died 65 million years ago at all. I think that they probably lived a lot more recent than that. There's cave paintings that show dinosaurs. There was a sword found in England with a brontosaurus carved on its blade. It would be very interesting that they were able to carve and depict these drawings on caves and carve these things into swords if they'd never seen these creatures, because they're anatomically correct. So that would suggest that man knew what dinosaurs looked like a very long time ago, and the only possibility is that man lived when dinosaurs lived as well.
Right. I had one other question, too, and this has to do with the symbols that are found throughout the Middle East, on the pyramids, the Coptic churches in Egypt, and that symbol being the winged disc. What would be your take on that?
Well, I've done a lot of look at Sitchin's work. I ingest a lot of Sitchin's work in the book that I wrote, and Sitchin suggests that it talks about Nibiru, that it talks about another planet. It's quite possible, but I don't know. I mean, it's really, really difficult to say. It depends on which rabbit hole you're going to go down. But like I said, all of these things, I think that we can investigate these things until the cows come home, and we're never going to find out the answers. They just keep posing more questions. I spent a lot of time looking down them, and while I was doing that, the world was turning to a pretty bad place around me, and I didn't notice because I was too busy looking for who and why, instead of looking for what's actually going on around me and ways to address that problem. I think that once we address the problem of what is going on around us, address the fact that these energies do exist, that these higher emotions do exist, and ask ourselves why we're being kept from these higher emotions, and start addressing what's going on around us, then all of these answers will come to us. They'll all be made apparent simply by matter of course.
A good answer, yeah, and I'd have to agree with you on that. The more you dig up, the more you gotta, you get focused and you kind of ignore the outside things. And I'd have to say that my experience was almost exactly what you just said there. Is, the darkness was surrounding me at one time during this. I just couldn't feed myself enough information for a period of time.
Well, yeah.
It culminated into a big thing, and now I've backed off a little bit, and I look at it from a different angle, a safer angle, I like to say. But, hey, I really appreciate your answers. Thank you very much. Enjoy hearing you. And, Christie, thank you, too.
All right, Bob. Thanks so much for calling in.
My pleasure, Bob.
Bet.
All right. Good night. I'd like to get back to, a few of the things that you mentioned tonight. And, Russ called in and asked about synchronicity, and you live your life by synchronicity. Can you give us a little insight on how does that work, or things like deja vu? Is it a glitch in the matrix? Is it one of those little periods where we're reminded that we're on the right path? Is it a total delusion? What are these events, or how can we better understand them?
I think time's cyclic. I think that we do this a lot. I really believe this is a holographic matrix that we're in. Everything points to that. Quantum physics points to that. And I think that if we listen to the language of our heart, every time we get presented with a decision, a choice, even with buying food in a shop, or whether to cross the street now, or whatever, listen to what your heart says. Your heart tells you to do things all the time, but we don't listen to it. And I think that's what we're here to learn. I think we're here to understand this language of feeling and emotion. And when you do this and you follow your heart, you'll find that your life becomes synchronistic. Things just happen for you. And that's the way I live my life. It's just learning that language, knowing that you're speaking it all the time. That's one of the hardest things, is that people simply don't understand that they're speaking it.
Okay, well, let's, you mentioned the language of the heart and listening to it, and the language of emotion, but how do we get to the point where we can decipher that voice? How do we know it's our heart or God's source speaking to us, as opposed to maybe the ego or say harp?
Well, it's a feeling. It's a feeling in your body. It's a physical sensation. It's not a little voice telling you that, you should do this. Your heart really tells you should do this. That's your mind telling you that your heart's telling you should do something. It's the gut feeling that you get. You get that inner knowing. It's a knowing within you. You simply got to be aware that it's there. And you'll find that you're communicating with reality around you through the emotional state that you're in. You have a thought, whether you're doing something out of self-service or whether you're serving the creation. What is your intention? What is your motivation in everything that you do?
So if it feels good. And you also know if it doesn't. If you have to justify, say, doing something for a paycheck or talk yourself out of it, normally that's your mind speaking, not your heart, right?
Absolutely. If you've got inner dialogue justifying your actions, then you've done the wrong thing, and you know you've done the wrong thing, and you're trying to talk yourself into believing it was the right thing. if you live your life in the state of in Lakesh, that's why I finish every radio show with in Lakesh, which means I am another yourself. So I try to treat everybody as I would be treated myself. That's the only commandment we need. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Mm-hmm. Treat other people as yourself. If you are doing the wrong thing by someone, you're doing the wrong thing by yourself. And the more I give to people and treat them the way I would be treated, the more rewarding my life is. The more things come to me. The more I give, the more life unfolds for me. But I don't ever give at the expense of myself. I'm not going to put myself in a state of shortage in order to give to someone else because I want everyone to think that I'm a cool guy who gives to people. It's not like that at all. I simply treat other people the way I would be treated. And sometimes giving to someone is not giving to them because they need a lesson. They need whatever it is. You know, they've come into your life for a reason. And, you know, if you can treat that person as yourself and think, well, what would I need to improve my reality if I was this person sitting here before me? You know, how can I improve that person's reality, but not at the expense of anybody else's reality? You know?
Yeah.
That's the key. And if you can live your life in that way, amazing things happen to you. It absolutely changed my life living in that way.
Mm-hmm. You can literally transform this hell on earth to heaven on earth.
Absolutely, you can. I mean, I just give everything. I believe that, look, with all the stuff, the book and the films and all the stuff that I put up there for free, I give it because I don't believe that I should sell information to people. And even when people want me to come and do talks, they say, how much do you want to come and do the talk? And I say, nothing. I don't want anything. I want to be able to give the information to people because it empowers me to give to them and it empowers them to receive the information. If at the end of the night they feel that they got something from the information or there's a donation box, they can make a donation. That will empower them to give and it will empower me to receive because I can't do it without the donations. I need financial support to be able to do what I'm doing. But at the same time, I'm not going to sell the information because that is moving me from the path. That's putting this little ritual thing in there. You know, you go to a talk by somebody and they want you to pay to go in there. You're immediately putting $50 value on this talk, or $20 value, or $100 value, whatever you paid to get in there. So you go in there with, I expect to get my $100 worth. I expect to get my $50 worth. And you sit there in judgment for the whole night, wondering whether you're getting your money's worth. Was it worth the $50? You can walk out and you go, yeah, that was worth the $50. You've missed the whole point. You know what I mean? You've gone there to get empowered. These people, obviously they've got expenses they need to be able to come and put on this show, but they also need to trust in themselves. They need to trust in their information and say, I'm going to give to these people tonight, and because I'm giving to them, they will give back to me. They will want to give back to me because I've made the effort to give to them. And that way you're breaking down that ritual. But you're breaking down that ritual. See, money is a talismanic ritual. The handing over of money, us putting value on this stuff, it doesn't exist. It's simply a tool to keep people in a state of shortage. That's all it is. So if you can get rid of that ritual and start giving to people unconditionally, you'll find the universe will give back to you. It really will. It won't if you expect it to. I'm going to give to someone because I expect to get this back.
Yes.
You haven't learned anything. Just give because it's the right thing to do. Do the right thing in the right way.
Service.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And feel it from the heart. Forced service doesn't work, or expectations, attachments and such. You're so right. Max, we have another caller on the line. Area code 410. Welcome to the show.
Oh, I'd like to thank you, Max, for giving of yourself this evening for us.
Absolutely.
My pleasure.
Yes, actually, I've been following your work for quite a few years now, and I really appreciate everything you poured out to us.
Well, thank you very much.
I wanted to bring up the subject of laminins. Are you familiar with those, Max?
What was that word? Sorry?
It's laminins. Basically, they're the cellular structure that binds the cells together, and it actually creates a form of a cross.
Okay, yeah, you're talking about the cell binders and they're shaped like a cross. I thought you said lanolin to start, so I couldn't quite figure that one out. Yeah, laminin, I think it's a fascinating binding agent. Of course, it's what holds our bodies together, really. It's kind of like the scaffolding that holds up the building. And it is quite interesting that it's shaped like a cross.
It also is shaped like the helical, spiral of the DNA. Also.
Well, yeah, it consists of the two spirals in forming the cross-like structure. I think it's very interesting that it's shaped like a cross, and I'm not particularly religious, but I do respect the teachings of religions and the teachings of Christ and stuff like this. I would suggest that a lot of the reason that the Christian cross is portrayed the way it is to, again, draw our attention to something outside of ourselves rather than something that exists within ourselves.
I think that it's a combination. I mean, we need to seek outer space as well as the inner space.
Oh, we do, but I mean, a lot of what we see in the outer space, we're only perceiving such a small part of it. And if we were to look within ourselves and activate our DNA, which can only be done from looking within, then we will be able to experience the external world to a greater degree. But at the moment, we're only experiencing a very, very small part of it. I think we need to look for the things that are put in the outer world that are put there to gain our focus and our attention. We need to look for these things within ourselves, because that's where the truth about them really lies.
Absolutely. I think, and I see what you're saying, caller, but I mean, I guess I can quote Tobias here. He says, the final frontier is not outer space, it's inner space. And all of these outer distractions are there to keep us from looking within. And, if anyone's honest with themselves, I'll speak for myself, but, that can be a very scary and sometimes, lonely place. And it's once we get, so we're automatically, I guess, programmed to think, oh, we need to look outside ourselves, or we need something to entertain us or keep us busy, because who really wants to do the mirror on the wall and really look at themselves honestly, and who really can even handle or stomach our own power as, individuals, yet all pieces of the source, or all pieces of the puzzle. But really, I think when you get past those blocks and look inner space, that's where the answers are. Well, doesn't even Jesus say, don't you know the kingdom of God is within?
Well, the thing is, when you can change your inner space and can change the way you understand reality, which happens from looking within, then you can interact with the external world in a completely different way. You certainly can't ignore the external world. Absolutely, you need to participate in it. You need to participate in your own transition to higher consciousness. You need to participate in the transition of the human race into freedom. But you can only really approach the outer world and help this transition, which I call what should be an act of global non-compliance. You can only do this by addressing that which is within and putting yourself in the correct energetic state in order to interact with external reality in the correct manner. So we're getting angry and having riots and revolutions and all this sort of stuff. You need to simply realize that the system that controls us is fictional. We can step away from it whenever we want, simply by coming into the power that is inherent within us all. That's where you need the blend between the inner world and the outer world in order to make it work.
Absolutely, very good.
Could I touch the subject of the DNA?
Absolutely.
How the DNA, they say that we have so much junk DNA, but I just think that's inactive parts of our DNA that have been turned off. But when those quote unquote markers, or those strands become turned on, I've read somewhere where when our DNA is, both strands are fully functioning, that there's a third strand that will form.
Well, that wouldn't surprise me at all. Like, our DNA is so locked down, and a lot of it is because of the electromagnetic soup we're forced to swim around in. The things like fluoride as well that shuts down our pineal gland. I believe that by putting yourself in the correct emotional state and embracing the correct energy, and you can literally recode your DNA, you can unlock an awful lot of it that's shut down. But at the moment, what's happening with the EMF and the EMR and the mobile phones and all the wireless technology around the place, you'll find that these mobile phones are, like they've actually done experiments with rats, and they've found that mobile phone frequency literally cuts the DNA in rats' brains. So what's happening with people as well is that their DNA is being severed, They're getting more and more disconnected from reality. The more their DNA is severed, the harder it's ever going to be to get them out of left brain, the more difficult time they're ever going to have thinking outside of the box. And all of these things are being done to simply prevent human beings from ever accessing these realms. It's like I said earlier, that they're trying to take away everything from us that makes us human, so they can then offer us these cheap imitations. They'd like to turn us into something like the Borg, like little implants and eye patches and all sorts of stuff, so that we can connect with each other and be like a hive mind. But if we were to activate our DNA and they were to stop feeding us all these toxins, and we could unlock all of these things we actually have within us, we'd find that we have already got a hive mind, but we also have an individual mind. We can connect with each other and with ourselves in ways that we simply can't perceive. Well, that most people can't perceive anyway. This is what all the Sufis and the meditation and all these things are all about, all the yogis trying to activate their pineal gland. It's all about recoding your DNA and unlocking these higher senses that we all have. They're all readily available to us if we're left in our natural state. If we can eat natural food, keep away from things like televisions, mobile phones, wireless technology, all this sort of stuff, try to drink fresh water, not fluoride-laden water. This is the way to do it. This is a physical body. You've got to participate in the physical world. You've got to treat your body like a temple. You've got to put the right things in it. And by being in that correct energy state from the food you're eating, and by being in the correct emotional state, you can literally unlock this DNA yourself.
I agree.
Absolutely. Well, any more questions for Max tonight?
Well, that's pretty much. I could sit and talk with this man all night. But,
I know, he's great.
But I'll bow out, and thanks again for having me on.
All right. Thanks for calling in, and more great questions again. I feel so blessed here. Max, let's talk a little bit more about, activating and unlocking or recoding our DNA. Isn't it true that our own thoughts and feelings, our own emotions contribute to the destruction of our DNA? Or, even hopefully not permanent, but at least the temporary imbalance thereof?
Oh, absolutely, they do. One of the things that disturbs me most about everything that's going on with the human race, the New World Order, all of the things that people talk about, what disturbs me the most is the effort that these people have gone to make sure that we never come into our true potential. The human race has never been left to be who and what we are, well, not for the last few hundred years anyway. As I said, we can only really know that which goes back for about 3 generations, because everything else we have to get from books. So I don't believe too many.
Yeah, and then the books, though, exactly, it's the ones we're allowed to see, right?
Exactly, the ones we're allowed to see. And
I kind of have a feeling it's always been this way, though. What do you think?
Well, it's been this way for a very long time. Knowledge has always been kept from the people. If people could really understand the potential that they have and were left to reach that potential, we could change reality in 3 seconds flat. We really could. And I think a lot of it is people's perception of reality as well. Like I said, I'm never in a state of fear. I can see all this bad stuff going on in the world, but I don't fear any of it. I want to help those who suffer in the world, but I do so not out of anger for the perpetrators, not out of pity for those who suffered, just out of a connection to all of them. And I pity the perpetrators as much as I pity those who suffer. I really feel the same about all of them, because these people are so disconnected. Imagine how disconnected you would have to be to go and hurt another individual, And if I was to go and then hurt that person, if I was to see someone beating some person up on the street, and then I go and attack the perpetrator, what I'm virtually saying is it's okay for you to beat people up, because now I'm going to beat you up. I'm saying it's okay for this to be done to others. What's happening is this person who's the perpetrator, he is so disconnected from reality. Otherwise, he wouldn't be attacking someone else. So I can have total empathy for both people in that situation. And that's why I do what I do, because I think all of the things that people go through, all of these things that bad people do, all of the suffering, the wars, all of the attitudes that people have, this is all because people simply don't understand the reality that they live in. And that's what I try to bring to people, is a deeper understanding of reality, because when you understand what reality is, you realize that it's just a temporary experience. There is no good or bad, really. There's simply different levels of connection and disconnection. That's what it is. And everybody's fighting against themselves. And they're seeing threats in others that don't exist. I feel very, very sad sometimes for the state of human consciousness, simply our willingness to attack ourselves the way we do. And it's all because we've been disconnected. Something happened that shut our DNA down, that blocked off our pineal gland, that limited our access to these higher realms. And because of that, we've been fighting each other. We've been fighting, trying to find where we fit in reality ever since. Because with these higher senses blocked off, we find it very difficult to understand reality. We don't even understand ourselves, let alone each other in reality. So I think it's incredible. And everything that's happening in the world today, with the rise in frequency, the rise in consciousness, it's all a wonderful opportunity for us to realize this about ourselves and just pause to take stock and reconnect with each other, reconnect with reality. I think we can do it, and we will do it, and we are doing it.
Absolutely. Okay, very well. And Max, as we mentioned before, you do all of this work, your videos, your movies, full-length ones even, your artwork, your music, your book, everything. You're doing this. I mean, you're putting it out there at no charge to us, all of this information. So how can we help you?
Well, there's a contribute button on the website if you'd like to make a donation. It's always very much needed. The coffers are pretty bare at the moment. But I'm really trying to get people back into a gift mentality, a gift culture. I think that if we learn to gift to each other, the world will be a far different place. I don't think we need to put so much value on paper the way we do. I think everything that is here for us in abundance, should we simply choose to give it to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, at the same time, you still need a roof.
Well, yeah,
like
unfortunately.
Else. And
fortunately,
so,
I live in
money still is a part of the game right now.
Well, it is still part of the game, unfortunately, but I'm really trying to help people shift that paradigm and realize that when you do give to people, it improves your life. You'll find that if you give from the heart without expecting anything back, and you give simply because it feels good and it's the right thing to do, then the universe will give back to you. And it really, really works for me. I'm living proof that it works. I give away everything that I have, and I'm always provided for when I need something. And that's the way it works.
Isn't it amazing how that works?
Well, it does. You've just got to be aware of it and start listening to the language of the heart, start following the path of the heart. And a lot of people say to me, what's the path of the heart? And they think about this warm, fuzzy feeling again. But really what the heart does is it gives unconditionally to the environment in which it lives. It doesn't expect the liver to say thank you for the blood. It doesn't expect the lungs to say thank you for the blood, but the lungs give the heart back oxygen. The stomach gives the heart back food, so everything.
Our kidneys keep processing the garbage we keep bombarding it with.
Yeah, well, all of that sort of stuff. But the heart is just this thing that just goes and gives unconditionally. And that's what it does. And it's an electromagnetic generator as well. It's the most powerful thing in the world. Simply follow that path and be aware of the language that you're speaking with your emotions and your intentions. And give to the creation. That includes yourself. Don't give to the creation at the expense of the self. Love yourself as much as you love other people, but certainly love other people as you would love yourself.
Oh, very good advice. I certainly agree, Max. And I just want to thank you again for giving so much of yourself and literally transforming the lives of people all over the world. I'm sure glad you found YouTube.
Well, it's been an interesting ride.
All right. Well, I wanted to talk more about the language of emotion and the emotional states and fear and love, and I hope we can bring you back and go talk about that further in depth than we did get to tonight in the future. But I want to thank you so much for sharing your time and wisdom and gifts with us tonight, Max. You've been such a delight, an honor, and a blessing. And thank you all for joining us here tonight. The website, once again, is thecrowhouse.com. That's thecrowhouse.com. And thank you all for joining us here tonight. Abundant blessings and love to all.